Hello and welcome. My name is Christina Royster, and I am the owner and founder of Words Therapy LLC. I'm really excited to be presenting with the Big EI event and just grateful that the SLT Scrapbook put this together for all of us. So I'm going to be talking about staff coaching and adapting early childhood curriculum for students and clients with complex communication needs. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am an AAC consultant in public schools, and then I also have the private practice, again, where majority of my clients are pre-verbal or early language learners, and many of them use AAC. And I am based mostly in Maryland, but I also see some clients in Washington, D.C. as well. So let me go into the agenda. So I'm going to be talking about preschool curriculum and then just some highlights about it, some information about complex communication needs in AAC, considerations in using curriculum with complex communicators, staff coaching and support, and what's hopefully the most helpful part of this presentation, which is the adapted resources section. So just some highlights about what makes a strong preschool curriculum. As you can see, there are many factors listed here, and these are all taken from the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. And many of them just make sense to us about like engagement and having experiences and interactions. But the one that I really wanted to point out is this one at the bottom in the red, individualization for children with unique needs. So that really is important for us because many of our clients and students are those with those unique needs. And we want to make sure that the curriculum is accessible to them. They shouldn't just be in the classroom just to be there. They should be participating and learning with it. So let me move on to this quote that I found that I think really describes complex communication needs well. The difference between what is complex for me versus people with disabilities is that on a day-to-day basis, I can get my message across, at least most of the time. For people with disabilities, the consequences of not being able to speak or not being understood are far-reaching and often serious. Their complex communication needs require urgent attention. So this pertains to our clients and students because a lot of times their basic wants and needs aren't being met just through traditional communication methods like verbal, or other methods. So we need to be there to intervene, to give them a way and a functional means of communication. And, this is something that pervades in every aspect of life, so including their education as well. And then this quote, I think, really speaks to the relationship between complex communication needs and AAC, especially with our students. Sometimes the learners we work with have more challenges than we explain. Lest you think we do not see the really challenging learners. We do, we really do. For those individuals with more challenges than most, sometimes we are asked, well, what do a few visual supports or AAC strategies do? What difference do they make? The truthful answer is a lot. And so I think this is powerful because we are tasked with going into these environments, whether it be a daycare center or a preschool or the home, or right now, many of us are online. And that is our job to make sure that our students are being met with at least the visual supports and AAC that they need. The implementation and going beyond that is important as well, but we should be there and be that, one of those main first bridges in being able to access and participate in our learning environments in the students' learning environments. So what are some AAC systems and forms? So we have some in here that are low tech, which would be like the paper-based systems. So the visual schedule that you see, you may be familiar with using visual schedules. I would really hope you are. PEX books or picture exchange books. The pod book, if you're not familiar with that, that's a system that is usually a paper-based book, but it's really helpful, and it was developed for students with really complex motor needs. And so it involves a communication partner where you either point or use another access method, but a lot of times it's pointing to a picture on the main page, and that will take you to another page that might be a more topic-based set of pictures. And so there's a lot of different ways, but the most important thing is that it's really great for modeling and really good for that language input, and it involves a communication partner, so it really gets both the adult and the AAC user, which is likely going to be a child for us, involved in the process. And then there are mid-tech devices like you see up here in the top left, the GoTalk. Anything that usually uses a battery like a Big Mac switch or a button or things like this GoTalk are considered mid-tech devices. And then we have our high-tech devices that are like iPads, the accent devices that you see here. And I forgot to mention the core board. That was a low-tech as well. So that includes high-frequency words that you can use in a lot of different contexts and settings. And you'll see a lot of communication books using a mixture of core words and fringe words, but this is a core board you see pictured here. So hopefully our environments are having at least some of these systems available for our students who need them. So considerations for curriculum use. Over my time in working in this area, I have seen a lot of different challenges that staff and instructors are facing when working with students with complex communication needs and trying to either implement a curriculum or even just any type of academic program that they're using with a variety of different types of learners. But there's a lack of training and experience, especially with students with more unique disabilities and abilities. There's a lack of planning time. There's not a lot of time to even plan what to do and how to adapt, let alone to actually make some of the materials. There's a lack of resources. Not every classroom or daycare is going to even have a printer to print out picture symbols, let alone to have devices available. Functionality and appropriateness. A lot of times the materials that are suggested by a curriculum aren't always appropriate or focusing on the things that we really think a child should be focusing on at their age and at their ability level. And then carryover and documentation are two other things that staff mention can be a little bit difficult with certain curricula. So we'll go on to the next slide. So the staff coaching model, it's very flexible. I think it's important to note that I have used this model in both in person as well as online and virtual therapy. So it's important to talk with the staff who you're trying to really work with to implement these strategies. Usually it's going to be a preschool or daycare teacher, but it's important to talk about what they would like to get out of, your involvement in your coaching them. And so that could be something just as simple as increasing the participation of the particular client or student or the child. Or it could be something a little bit more specific about, being able to use a certain type of device in a certain type of activity or, with a certain book. So it can be broad or it can be very specific. It's important to talk to them about modeling and using the system that your child is using. So using that device or using that communication book and just talking to them about general communication strategies, about maybe simplifying language or not having the expectation that a child who uses under 10 words, they're not going to just jump into using 4-word sentences. So going over some of those, general language development stages. And then again, using adapted resources, which is what I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation talking about. So some of the adaptation methods that I've used in the past and currently use, on the left, you see that this is a communication book that I've made. It's just in a regular binder, and the bottom portion is a core board. So that board never changes. It always stays the same throughout whatever book we're reading, or throughout whatever theme that the curriculum is focused on. And then the top is like a flip book. And so that's the only thing that I will change. And, based on maybe a couple different, like I'll make one for a book that we might be reading for the next week or two, because again, our learners may need a lot of that repetition, a lot of that modeling. So it's okay to read the same book over and over again. And that also, decreases on the amount of time. We don't have to keep recreating things over and over because again, that core board stays the same. It's just maybe the top materials might have to change a little bit on the top of the flip book. And then on the right side is something that I've been using for virtual. And so what I made is in a Google slide, I just used a regular board that was in PDF form and, put it on a Google slide. And then I recorded my voice for each of these buttons and put a little button, a transparent button behind each of them. If you'd like more help in, how to do this, feel free to reach out and I can show you how it's actually not as complicated as it might sound. But it basically makes a talking communication board, which is really cool. It can be used whether the student points to it or the child points to the button and maybe the parent clicks it, Or even I've had other times where the parent will just say like, oh, he or she pointed to whatever button, and then I'll just click it. And so it speaks and gives them that voice output. So that's a way you can implement and make an adapted resource even online. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so I also made adapted resources for books, and this was also for virtual learning that I've done, in person. I put picture symbols in books all the time. I'll simplify books to kind of make them a little bit less complex in terms of the sequencing and the storylines in them. But here's what I've done for online. Once I kind of made a template for answering different yes and no questions, or for even just matching and answering questions, I use the same templates over and over, and I just take the images in and out to substitute those depending on whatever the activity is. So sometimes there's some of that front load, but then after that, you can just switch things out and your templates are there. And again, I'm happy to share any of the templates that I've made for different books. So if you see a book here, and I have lots more, feel free to reach out and I can send that to you. Okay, let's go to our next one. Okay, so lesson picks is a great way to adapt resources. You can use Boardmaker. I am still very much a fan of Boardmaker, but I find that a lot of different staff members that I've talked to don't always have access to Boardmaker for various reasons. So lesson picks is becoming a lot more popular and is already very popular. So here's an example of just some visuals that I made for requesting cars with want car. And so lesson picks has their own set of symbols, and they also have Unity symbols, which are through a company called PRC, which many of you all may be familiar with, for like a device that uses lamp words for life. So it's nice that Lesson Picks does have those symbol sets on there too, to make just low tech, whether you want to make a visual schedule, a sentence strip, or a communication board using the same symbols that a child may be using on their device. Another option is Chat Editor. It's only available on PC, unfortunately. I am a Mac girl, but I eventually broke down and got a PC so I could use Chat Editor, but it's free, and you can basically what I'm showing here in this image is that, it shows lots of different icons. Once you push them, it can record and capture them, and then I just copied and paste onto a Word document. So that's another way to make just some of those visual supports for picture symbols, visual schedule, some of the different ways that we use low-tech resources. So that's Chat Editor for any student who may be familiar with this symbol set. And then one of my favorite ways to adapt, and one of the tried and true, which I'm sure many of you all have already done in the past, is just cutting out things from, a box of cereal, or for right here, I still cut with the example with toy cars. You can use the packaging from a toy, cut it out, put a magnet on it, put tape on it even. And for here, I put on a cookie sheet, and that automatically becomes AAC, because now it's a choice board, or a student can use it to exchange, almost like PECs, like picture exchange. So there's a lot of different ways that you can make picture symbols without it being something that even requires computer ink. So that's another way to think about, incorporating into the curriculum, or just whatever activities they're doing in the classroom. And that's also great for when we're in our home environment and parents may not have access to a lot of the materials that we would typically have in school or in a classroom. And so here are some pre-made ones that I have used myself, and I think that are great. On Boardmaker Online, if you have access to that. But there's also an account, Catherine Daly, she makes some amazing resources for AAC. Her account is right there, AAC for All. And here's just a visual schedule she's made, and she has it available in also different skin tones, which is a great thing as well. And it's free right now on Boardmaker Online. And then again, she has many other things. This is just one example. I also really like the Preschool AAC play pages. So there are some topic-based play pages for different things like cars, playing with dolls, I think bubbles, Play-Doh, some other common preschool activities. And it's just a pre-made set of picture symbols that you would be using during those activities. And I believe it's just $6, and it's on Teachers Pay Teachers. So I think it's well worth the investment, and it saves you some time. And then finally, there is a curriculum that already exists for AAC users called the Tell Me curriculum, which is great. And it's, a research curriculum. It was developed by AAC experts. So, and it uses books that we would typically be using in the preschool setting. And so you can feel free to look into that curriculum if you're interested in, getting it for whatever program you may be supporting. But I just wanted to point it out because they're on the blog called Practical AAC, which is an amazing resource for AAC in general. If you search preschool, you'll see that there's a lot of resources for things. And especially right now, they're doing a feature about using the Tell Me curriculum in a virtual classroom. They're having 2 SLPs that have an account that I listed right here on the right. But they're, kind of guest blogging and sharing how that they're doing the virtual classrooms, which with the Tell Me curriculum, which can be adapted to any preschool environment, in my opinion, because again, they're using very common preschool books. So I hope that was a quick but helpful review of some ways to just adapt what we already have and to share some new resources that you can hopefully use in your practice and with your students and clients. And so if you have any questions, if you saw anything that you would like more information about or something that I can share with you, please reach out. My Instagram is right here, and here is my email. And I really appreciate all of your support and for listening. Thank you very much. Bye.